It was a gorgeous spring day, April 25th. My name is Bob Watson, and I work as a tax accountant in Omaha, Nebraska. Even though tax season was extended due to the pandemic, most of my clients filed their returns last week. They all ended up owing a little more, and even though the filing date was extended, they will have to pay interest on the taxes owed. The sensible thing to do was to file the return. My office is nice enough. I work on the third floor on the north side of the office building. I have a whole wall of windows, but the problem is that they face north, there's not much light, and I can see pretty much the same office building across the street. If you know a tax accountant, we spend most of late winter and early spring with our noses in the computer, filling out returns. And it doesn't matter that my office overlooks the most romantic landscape in the world. I'll still have my nose buried in numbers. At lunchtime, I went outside for some air, and the day was so gorgeous I decided I needed a day off. My wife Marie and I live in a beautiful house overlooking the Platte River, a few miles before it flows into the Missouri River. The day was too beautiful, and I just had to watch the water flow by. I headed for home. When I pulled up to our house, there was a BMW in the driveway. The license plate Big Rich told me whose Beamer it was. Richard Newberg III, or Big Rich, after the inmate who captured his license plate, was visiting my wife. I drove past the house, around the corner, parked, and walked home. You see, Dickie, as he was known to many, was the wayward son of Dick Jr. I assumed he was given his driver's license because his wallet made him big and rich. He claimed he had another reason for being called big. One thing was for sure, his ego was huge. If you could buy him for what he was worth and sell him for what he thought of himself, you wouldn't have to work 5 lifetimes. Dickie was well known, thanks in part to his father, Richard Newberg, Jr., one of the richest men in Omaha and, I believe, one of the richest men in the world. He made his new money mostly in commercial real estate. Junior, as he was called, tried his best with his playboy son, but to no avail. The old man was brilliant, driven, and excelled at everything he took on. Dickie, on the other hand, was just a hustler. Our house has a large porch that wraps around 2 sides of the house. You can sit on it and look out over the river no matter where the sun shines or where the wind blows. I snuck onto the porch and started walking toward the front of the house. As I approached the living room, I could hear Marie and Dickie talking. All the windows were open and I was only 5 or 6 feet away from them, outside on the porch, while they were inside, sitting side by the windows. I pulled out my phone and turned on the recording app. In my business, people often list the smallest details they know from familiarity, but I have to review them to make sure all the details are true. That's why I know my audio app well and use it often. Marie, it's never going to be easy. When he comes home, tell him he's too boring and you're moving out. Dickie, can't you be here with me? I really love him, and I'd hate to see him frown. It would be better to tell him that we love each other and there is still room in my heart for him. Marie, you know I love you, but think about it. You don't have room for him except on the trash heap. You've moved on with your life. And as for me, Daddy told me that if I have intercourse with another married woman, he'll remove that big outgrowth you like so much. She laughed like an enthusiastic schoolgirl. Dickie, your daddy would never hurt you. Don't kid yourself. The old man is ruthless. He won't castrate me, but he might cut my income to 0. Or worse, make me work, again, a few hours here and there. Besides, you need to look destitute so you can take everything he has away from him. Oh, Dickie, of course not. I feel bad enough leaving him. You've got tons of money. Surely we can leave him with his money, if not his pride. No, we can't. I want to have everything. If you want me, you'll have to show me that. If you stomp on him hard, he'll hate you. And then I won't have to worry about you going weak in the knees when one of your ankle biters bursts into tears and wants to run to Daddy. We have 2 children. Claire, our oldest, is 7 years old, and our youngest, Bobby, is 18 months old. You're consistent. I've got to hand it to you. Okay, when he comes over, I'll give him a treat. They continued talking, and I realized that tears were streaming down my cheeks, and all I could do was hold back from sobbing. As I continued to take notes, I had to stop listening to the woman I love talk casually about how she would destroy me personally and financially just to prove a point. It got quiet. Apparently, they had moved on from their discussion to another activity. I decided it was time to leave and call Ben and Nancy. I snuck out. No one knew I was there. Ben and Nancy. One of my longtime clients was my friend Edwin, Ed Dover. Ed and his wife had a family law firm and they were doing quite well. His wife, Sally, practiced law under her maiden name of Joyette. They jokingly nicknamed themselves Ben and Nancy. The first time I had to ask her why. She answered me without a shadow of a smile that it was a good name for a family law firm, Ben Dover and N. Joyette. Ed and I work with several of his clients whose personal wealth often requires both legal and financial planning. It is not uncommon at this time of year for one of them to forget an important element of their plan and need immediate assistance. I called Ed and briefly told him that I was out of my depth and needed their help. Bob, here's what we're going to do. I'm tied up for a while, but Sally can get free. Drive to our house, she'll meet you there. I'll call Marie. If she picks up, I'll tell her the big account has a bigger problem and you're drowning in it. You can call her tomorrow and let her know when you're home. I was grateful to have such good friends, not petty, and they invited me over to their house. When I ended up at their house, Sally greeted me with a hug. She wanted to know what was wrong. I said only one word, Marie, and started sobbing like a fool. She squinted and looked me in the eye. Illness? She paused. I was silent. Betrayal, I said through my tears. What a bitch. Ed will be here in less than an hour. Let's see if we can have 2 big glasses of martinis before he gets here. No business until then. I hate mixing martinis and betrayal. So we did. She's a great conversationalist. She didn't pull me out of my depression, but thanks to her charm, whiteness, and half a pint of gin, I was no longer crying when Ed walked in. Hey, you two, how's it going? Bitch betrayed him. Whore. Well, let's see what we can do to ruin her life even more than she ruined his. That lifted my spirits. I pulled out my phone and turned on the tape. When it ended, I said, I have 2 thoughts. First, we'll use this in court, and then we'll take it to his father. We'll fry the bastard. Say that. Ed and Sally looked at each other and spoke in some invisible language. She nodded and turned to me. Bob, you're new to this arena. Things aren't done here the way they're commonly thought of. At least in a case like this, if you want to win, things aren't done in such a straightforward manner. Ed, tell him to take the tape to Daddy. You seem to know Wild Jr. a little. Isn't he the official landlord of your firm? Well, yes, but I don't write the rent checks and he doesn't get them. Those are handled by others. Junior, as he likes to call himself, inherited a fair amount of money, but he acquired a taste for it early on. Almost nothing he does has anything to do with getting richer. He's a ruthless bastard. He has a love-hate relationship with his son, but Dickie is his truly weak blind spot. He spends fortunes to get this lowlife out of one mess and then another. For a while, he's been putting Dickie to work, but Dickie seems to have even more talent than his father. His father's talent is to get money. Dickie, on the contrary, is even more skillful, if it can be called that, in losing it. The younger man couldn't employ him, so he essentially provided for his pampering. It cost him, but not nearly as much as his idiot son's not-so-brilliant business ideas. Oh, for heaven's sake, Ed. He doesn't want to know the family history. He wants to know if he can take the tape to Junior. Of course not. Junior will kick Dickie's ass and destroy you for pointing out that his son is an asshole. You heard it yourself. Dickie wants all your money to go to Marie. She and Dickie will spend it in a few weeks or months. When the younger one needs to replenish Dickie's supply, he won't help Marie anymore. Dickie is a bad boy that some women are drawn to. He's also reportedly well-equipped, in quotes, and not a bad lover. Because of his image and prowess in the bedroom, he has acquired many married women. He uses them until he gets bored and they go broke. Then he asks Junior for money and moves on. Junior will help his son. Marie, on the other hand, will be left with no money, no shelter, and forced to move to another planet to escape Junior's wrath. In a father's eyes, it won't be his darling son who will be blamed for ruining his life, but your bitch ex-wife. You're lucky in that sense. This story is going to end very, very, very badly for her. In the meantime, we have to figure out how to survive this coming Armageddon for you and your children. When I heard that phrase, my blood ran cold. I thought it was a metaphor. Suddenly, I was overcome with trepidation. This was worse than I thought, and it hadn't even started yet. What if I sneak into the house tomorrow, take the kids and disappear? Sally smirked. That's a great idea if you can actually disappear. I mean, disappear without a trace so that no one and nothing will see you in eternity. Otherwise, it's a very bad idea. I can buy fake IDs, Ed suggested. It would take Junior about 30 seconds to find whoever made your documents. There's nothing he can't detect. Lie to yourself. The only way to avoid his wrath is to arrange not to impose. A way out will be found, but sometimes it is very difficult. Our job is to minimize the initial pain and see you come out unscathed. Sally noticed the hurt on my face and called for a ceasefire. That's enough for today. Give me your cell phone back. Tomorrow you go out and buy a new one. An identical one if you can. This phone will stay with us, so we'll have the original of your recording and Junior won't be able to steal it from you. The only assignment is to come home tomorrow and be surprised when you hear, "We need to talk." We had a late dinner, I was put to bed, and we went to bed pretty early. I didn't sleep very well. My Pearl Harbor was no longer going to be a sneak attack. Act 1, Scene 1. All day I was like a long-tailed cat in a room full of rockers. At work, everything made me jump up and down. A few people asked if I was okay. It was hard to say I was fine for now and not admit that my world was about to explode. I drove home, pulled into the garage, took a long, deep breath, let the air out, and walked into the house as I usually did, announcing, "Honey, I'm home." A voice from the dining room said, "Here." I sighed quietly. This was my last chance to admit that I knew what was going on, and walked into the dining room. "This is unusual. What's the matter?" "Sit down. We need to talk." Oh shit, sitting there like I'm some stray dog. They didn't say hello to me, didn't call me by name. Even though I was prepared, emotions started to rise. I decided to sit without comment. "Bob, as you know very well, things have not been okay between us for a long time. I've decided to file for divorce." The coldness of her words was matched by the calm expression on her face. She was well rehearsed. I pulled out my new phone and pressed record, placing it on the table beside me. "I'm not sure I understand. I don't know that things aren't okay between us. Why are you applying?" "What is it?" "My phone?" "Not your phone, asshole. What are you doing?" "Asshole? You rarely swear and you've never called me a name in your life?" "See, this is what we've come to. You're lying and making me look bad. There's no record of our fights, of you humiliating me, and me smiling and taking it. And now you're starting to take notes, making me look like a villain. Turn it off, or this conversation is over." "I'm not turning it off." "Then leave." "I'm not leaving. This is my house too. Why can't we talk? You asked me to sit down and talk. Why won't you do it?" "Turn off your recorder and listen to what I have to say, or get out. Those are the two options." "That's polite, but I have to tell you that I'm using the other option of sitting and waiting for you to tell me what's going on with your recorder on." "Have it your way." She got up and walked away. I was left sitting there, completely stunned. What kind of woman was this? There was not a hint of emotion in her, absolutely no warmth, just a cold stare and an ultimatum. Even more frightening to me was the fact that she was willing to take notes and refuse when I took them. I sank into contemplation. A tear appeared on my cheek and I brushed it away. She was returning to her chair. "Isn't this nice?" she said, sitting back down. "What exactly is nice, if I may ask?" "Tears, after what you've done and are doing. You have the nerve to pretend to cry." "Marie, talk to me, dear. I don't understand what's going on. I come home and you surprise me with talk of divorce and wonder why I have a tear running down my cheek. What happened? Why can't we talk about it?" "The kids and I aren't safe with you acting like this. Now you're even recording our conversations to seem normal and I'm being difficult. I won't stand for it." I just sat there staring at her with my mouth open. How could she rehearse like that? Now she was using my recording to her advantage, and it tempted me to turn it off. I knew Ben and Nancy would be harder on me than Marie if I did. I left the tape on. We looked at each other. I heard police sirens. A moment after that, the front door opened and two officers entered the dining room with stun guns in their hands. "Sir, I need you to calm down." "I'm sitting at my dining room table. What can I do to appear calmer?" "Don't struggle, sir. Stand up and put your hands behind your back." I quickly decided that resisting would get me nowhere. I stood up and turned my back to them, arms outstretched. I was shocked. I was handcuffed. I asked, "May I ask what this is about?" "We received a call from 911 informing us that your wife fears for her safety. We are responding to that call. We're going to take you outside so you can cool off, and we'll talk to each of you individually." They led me to the door. Both officers flanked me, leaving Marie alone at the dining room table. Wait, I said, I need my phone. Where's your phone, sir? The female officer said. On the dining room table. She turned and walked back to the dining room. The other officer escorted me out onto the porch. After a few seconds, she came out and told her partner. There was no phone in there. The wife says she has no idea what he's talking about. She turned and walked back into the house. Now we want to ask you a few questions. First, let me ask you, have you calmed down enough for me to remove your handcuffs? Officer, at the risk of sounding uncooperative, I left my cell phone on the dining room table. My wife surprised me today by telling me we don't get along and she wants a divorce. In 9 years, we had never had a fight. I was totally shocked and started recording her conversation. She objected, told me to turn my phone off. I refused. She left for a while, then came back. I think when she left, she called you. Now I'm being charged with violent acts and I can refute that, if you'll just take my phone. Stand up and turn your back to me. I did. He undid one handcuff and made me sit on the porch swing suspended on chains from the ceiling. He clipped the open handcuff to the chain, making sure I stayed put. I'm going to go find your phone. He walked away. I didn't time it, but it had been at least 15 minutes. We searched everything thoroughly and didn't find a phone. We called your phone and got no answer. Then my partner asked if you had the Find My Phone app turned on your phones. Your wife said yes, picked up her phone, and we found your phone at a house across town. Your wife said you worked there last night. I figured she had a full mug of coffee. Maybe she put her phone in it? Sometimes people don't think of the most obvious place. Damn. The search engine came up with my old phone, which meant that if I wanted to blab about her having my phone, I'd have to admit that I knew she wanted a divorce. That wouldn't be good, I thought, and decided to give up the phone. Sir, are you willing to admit that the phone didn't exist? No, officer, I'm not ready. I can't explain what happened. I had the phone and I recorded our conversation. Marie didn't go anywhere. The phone should be there. Can you explain why your phone was ringing on the other side of town? I can't explain that right now. Then we will assume that no phone was here and your statement is untrue. My statement is not false. I am not changing it in any way. Very well. How will you respond to the allegations that you have become increasingly violent towards your wife? I categorically deny them. You were out all last night. Did you lash out at your wife? Absolutely not. I was with 2 lawyers conducting business. Could you state the nature of this business? I'm afraid I'm not at liberty to talk about it. We'll get in touch with those lawyers. That's all right with me. Everything I have told you or will tell you is the plain truth. I have nothing to hide. You told me your cell phone was here, but it's not. You told me you are in business, but you are not at liberty to disclose exactly what business you are in. So far, your honesty doesn't impress me. His partner appeared in the doorway. He looked to see if I was free of the handcuffs and went inside. He wasn't gone for long. We're taking you downtown to check in. May I ask what you're being charged with? Domestic disorderly conduct and assault. He read me my rights, my damn rights. They took me to some building, fingerprinted me, took my picture, and threw me in a cell. I was allowed to call Ben and Nancy's. They didn't answer. I left a message and was told that was my limit. I sat in some semblance of a cell for a day and a half. I was offered food 3 times, I took it once. I hardly slept at all and was glad to hear my name called. I walked to the door and was escorted to a smiling Sally. Have you been harmed in any way? No, I'm fine. Come with me. She was all business. We walked a little less than a jog and reached the office. She rushed inside. The policeman looked at her and was clearly displeased. Don't you knock? Don't you dare bother me because I'm a woman. I'm here to file both criminal complaints and to notify you that my client will be suing the city for $3 million. I want both arresting officers suspended without pay. They are violent, reckless, ignorant, and generally a danger to polite society. Miss Joyette, if I may, there's not a damn thing you can do. She turned to me and sweetly asked me to sit down. She pulled out some forms and filled them out. A couple times she asked me to sign. I signed. When we left, I started to ask what was going on. She raised her hand, and I took that as a sign to be quiet and follow her. Many people say that saying we need to talk got them through some of their hardest days. These people didn't care about me. Something had changed. I went from a reluctant participant to a zealous enemy. Back to my lawyer friends. I returned to the residence of my friends. For the entire story, I don't know if anyone was worse off than I was the first time I met her. She told me we needed to talk, and then, aside from making baseless accusations, she refused to talk. If this was what my life was going to turn into, I wasn't sure I could take it. Bob, you may not like it, but we got a huge break. Well, I said to Sally, heated but frank, if it was a win, I don't expect to lose. Ed continued, you shouldn't have been arrested. My guess is that one or both of the arresting officers know Dickie or know Junior and were trying to gain their favor. Instead, they made a huge mistake. The whole thing smelled bad for the sergeant, and he called me about the missing cell phone. He got a warrant and found it. The phone was in the trash can and had been soaked in coffee. Marie claims you did it. We're lucky she didn't take it out of the house, Sally continued. It took them a while to get a warrant, and it wasn't until this morning that a search was conducted. We don't know for sure, but Junior doesn't seem to be involved. If he was involved, they wouldn't have had time to get a warrant. The phone would have turned to dust, lost in some big mound of dust. Ed picked up the phone. This is just the beginning. I hate to say it, but now Junior will be involved. We had to do several things to make it clear that a false arrest had been made. The worst of them was playing your first recording for Judge Marin. I thought you said it was stupid to show that tape to the judge. Well, I don't remember exactly, but we told you something to the effect that nothing is simple. Why is my suggestion to share the audio file with the judge a mistake, and yours a good deed? We need to understand Marie. I thought you and her made a great couple. Not only is she vindictive, but she's damn skilled at it. Dickie has a reputation as a charming ladies' man, but she's become your greatest enemy. Do you have any idea why? Tax time is always hard on us. I have work and clients in need of help year-round, but from late January through mid-April, I do almost half of my billable hours. I work and sleep, that's it. I know I have to eat. I do it while I'm working. Bob, that's not the way you look at it. Sally was almost in my face. So you have a bad quarter every year? It's an excuse to get bored, maybe have an affair, and this woman acts like she hates you. Why? We decided that Marie would leave her job while our children were small. Our 7-year-old Claire came along right away. We were already thinking about having a second child, but then Bob Jr. came along. He's about 18 months old now. What Marie had hoped would be 5 or 6 years of staying at home now looks like 10 or 12. That worries her. Bob, it's not over yet, and you know it. Marie has always been fascinated by Dickie and his kind. Guys who have time to be carefree and frivolous. She once told me that accountants lack spontaneity, not to mention frivolity. I countered that in my business, spontaneity is probably a criminal offense. I thought it was funny, but she wasn't amused. Now it was Ed's turn. Bob, that sounds like what the wife is looking for. Did you warn her? Warned her? No. But I guess I never looked. Marie is 6 years younger. We were an unlikely couple at first. She was looking for the right husband. I was doing well. But as strange as it sounds, we found common ground. She was the spirit, I was the support. We worked. But looking at what's happening now, a curious person might suspect. What exactly? Sally asked. She says she wants the right house, the right schools, the right everything. She says she wants to work, but her degree in linguistics doesn't give her a chance for much, and there's nothing here. She says a lot of things, but I never see action. All she does is make sure we're at the right parties with the right audience and so on. The right parties and the right audience is not a bad thing. Being associated with the best people in the neighborhood must be good for business. Sally nodded. Obviously, both realized I wasn't seeing the whole picture of what was going on. Well, for her, the right parties are the ones with Dickie in that company. And she flirts with all the men? Ed looked suspicious. Not exactly, but she's outgoing, friendly, our social organizer. And I'm just sitting here wondering. We laugh about it. Or we used to. If I think back, the problem started at the New Year's Eve ball. The company Dickie was a part of was using some kind of drugs, nothing illegal, she assured me. One of them had a woman's name, like Maggie. Gee, you're just a party girl, Sally laughed. What about Molly? Okay, I hope you don't expect me to be embarrassed. I know everything I need to know about drugs. Okay, I'll admit it. I'm a complete ignoramus on the subject. I was living a quiet, idyllic life, or so it seemed to me. But maybe not everything Marie would want you to know. Ed was grim. Party people can get hooked on prescription painkillers, benzos, and the like. They think it's legal, but only if taken as prescribed by a doctor. We have to start digging. If she's using something, your kids aren't safe. Sally made a note to herself. Well, our picture is a little clearer. Your wife has gone from boredom to thrill-seeking. Of that we can be sure. Changes in behavior and impaired judgment are typical of use. That's what worries me. I know one thing. Marie is vindictive as hell. If Dickie has convinced her that I'm the enemy, then whether her thinking is impaired or not, she will lash out at me with fury. I think that's what I saw when we met. Sally looked at Ed. Dickie did. I know he did. He gets his friends to tell victims that spouses are cheating. I don't know exactly how he does it, but he does it. Then he moves into the house. He has a great reputation. I think the ladies like to be loved by him, but for today, he gets bored, he leaves, and Junior deals with the consequences. Ed looked at me. If you talk to her friends, try to find out if they think she has a reason to resent you. Unfortunately, it's not that important right now. We got Junior involved, so it's a war. Sally laughed, shaking her head. It has to be the first time spouses say, "Honey, we need to talk," and never do, and all hell breaks loose anyway. I'm sorry, but neither of you ever told me why you lost the tape to the judge. Marie says you're abusive. You're having an affair. You are a danger to her children. There has been no phone in your house for some time. This confirms what she says. We decided it was best to release the tape to discredit her accusations and show that you are the injured party. It wasn't easy, but we pulled it off. Why was it a difficult moment? All the judges are friends with Junior. He found out his idiot son was involved with some new mistress plotting your demise. Junior knows that Dickie is going to ruin everything. Junior will do everything he can to get ahead of things. Destroy you, let Dickie have his fun, dump Marie, then destroy her and wait for Dickie's next affair. It was very challenging, because if you become a good guy, the war will start much sooner than we were prepared for. Fortunately, we have a good case against the city. They'll pay you a lot of money. I'm afraid you'll need more to defend yourself against Junior's wrath. Junior's wrath? It was Monday, a new week, a chance to start fresh. I was staying with my friends and lawyers, Ed and Sally. Their house has a guest wing. There is a door from their family room to a small office. The door from the study leads to the hallway. From there, you can exit the house and walk to the bedroom or the large bathroom. The bedroom is large and has a pantry with a coffee maker, microwave, and small refrigerator. I can stay in this room and never go out to the main house. From what I've been told, I'll need them often. I arrived at work at 5 minutes to 9. At exactly 9 o'clock, I was called in, and a lawyer from the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham and Howe, the firm that Junior had chosen, appeared on the doorstep. He was holding a stack of large envelopes. He told me I had to sign for them. One moment, please. I pressed #1 on the speed dial, and Ed picked up the phone. Ed, the bailiff is here with a stack of envelopes. He wants me to sign each of them. Ed asked, putting me on speakerphone. I said, "My name is Ed Dover. I am Mr. Watson's attorney. Please state your name." "Ralph, just call me Ralph," the server said. "Ralph, my client is not knowledgeable enough to sign these documents. Therefore, our legal system has established a process for serving legal documents. You have your responsibilities, which I assume you are aware of. My client doesn't have any duties because he's not involved in a lawsuit at this point. If you want to serve him with documents, do so. He is not a party to this litigation. I have been instructed to obtain signatures. Ralph, serve my client and leave, or just walk away. My client is in front of you. Take your pick." The server put on an arrogant look. "I understand that you refuse to get your client's signature. I'm leaving now." "Thank you, Ralph. Have a good day." Ralph turned and walked away. When he was out of earshot, I said, "Ed, he didn't leave any paperwork." "Bob, I've been in more trials than I care to mention, and I've never seen one. Did you happen to see his list that he wanted you to sign?" "Saw it. One of the items, probably the third on the list, was called complaint. The first two were notice of this and that I can't remember. There were also interrogatories, and more than one, if I got it right. And what do? The lawsuit follows one clear path. They file a complaint. The complaint states the cause of action and the grounds. We answer the complaint, admitting or denying their claims. Then, if any of us need information to properly defend our position, we request an investigation. The judge grants that request. Then motions and things like interrogatories are filed. Someone is out of control. I smell Dickie. I called Ed again toward the end of the day. Another server had arrived with a single document. He was waiting outside my office. Ed asked me to invite him in. The man asked if I was Bob Watson. I answered in the affirmative. He handed me an envelope and said, "You have been served." He walked away. Bob, that's exactly how it should be. But I will say that I called Ron Howe and asked him to put me on the list of your attorneys. He asked me to confirm it with a letter. I did so and sent it to him with a courier. They served you anyway. I hate to say it, but you have a mess on your hands. My loving wife hates me. Her boyfriend is out to get me, and his powerful father is stepping on his heels, crushing everything in his path. Where's the problem? Bob, I can't tell you what a clown show this morning was. You couldn't find a single clerk, let alone a lawyer. And the document server couldn't have behaved like that either. No, Dickie was the one throwing around his arrogant incompetence. I can only think of two reasons. The first is, Dickie is trying to impress his old man that he's at ease. You might ask why someone would screw up so thoroughly to prove they're doing well. I'd say it's Dickie. He's a disaster. Everything he touches, he messes up. The second, in my opinion, is more likely. Junior heard from the judge about the tape. Junior asked his son what was going on. Dickie explained that he wanted Daddy to help. Daddy refused. Dickie messed up on purpose so the old man would interfere. I felt bad that my wife had become a stranger, so I turned to my friends who are knowledgeable in these matters. They told me that it was a pattern and explained that things do not happen in a pattern afterward. I was confused and asked, why did Dickie need Junior's help? You're holding my ass. I have no idea. Junior's role is to restore order. He threatens and harasses Dickie and ends up bailing him out. None of them want to get him involved before his time, unless it's different from their usual dance. Different? Different how? Bob, I have no idea. Maybe it's the drugs. Or maybe it's about something else, I'd guess. But if Dickie made this public embarrassment to get his father to intervene, I don't like it. Now I was flabbergasted. If Junior isn't going to clean himself up and instead is going to campaign for Marie, that sounds serious, very serious. I can't say how serious, Bob, but Dickie's involved, and that's a plus. He could be your biggest ally when all is said and done. You've read stories of a husband and former Marine being wronged. Shortly thereafter, retribution of biblical proportions ensues. The husband emerges unharmed and all the bad actors are left behind, barely existing. I'm not an ex. I'm an accountant. I could have gone and refused to do their taxes, but I didn't. Things have gotten worse. We need to talk, I repeat. I got a text from Marie. We need to talk. Something told me I should ignore it. Whatever she was trying to warn me about wasn't loud enough, so I sent a return message. Sure, where and when? The return message pissed me off. This has gotten out of hand. My lawyer says I can't talk to you unless she is present. Then we can't talk. Thank you for bringing it up. She continued to write. I forwarded everything to Sally. I guess I'm a slow learner. I still trust my wife. I know she can't be trusted, but I haven't let her go. I haven't stopped. I would say I still love her if it weren't for a conversation I overheard. But she was clearly feuding with me. Why? Many people have been in my situation, and they are not senior tax professionals at a large accounting firm. They don't have the resources. They don't have the best legal friends. Thinking about them, I have to get out of their house. Separate entrance or not, they won't shelter me. I looked for a nice apartment that my firm could lend to good clients when I move out. Eventually, I could write off my stay there as a business expense. I quickly found that option. I also discovered that I had no assets. They were all frozen. More work for Ed and Sally, their bend over and enjoy jokes were getting less funny by the day. I was amazed. I was approached by the CEO of our firm, who I'm friends with but we're not really friends. He said he had heard that I was going through a divorce and was looking for an apartment. He said it might be good for the firm, and if I found anything, let him know. He was sure he could talk our board of directors into buying an apartment and renting it to me for a certain period of time. I was shocked that it was so widely known that I was divorcing or looking for a place to live. But you don't look a gift horse in the mouth, right? Before I knew it, we had an apartment that cost me almost nothing. Life was getting better. I got a call from Ed. We were meeting with Marie and her lawyer. The good life was coming in short bursts these days. My secrets were out in the open. Ed and Sally decided to attend that first meeting. We were still outnumbered. Marie sat in the center of a small army of people who didn't identify themselves in any way, at least to me. On the other side of the table, there was an absolutely feudal atmosphere. The queen, her lords and ladies, footmen and other minions. Marie looked at me. I apologize for all these formalities. I was so looking forward to talking to you. She was interrupted by a sullen woman who, with her general cheerfulness, could well have worked in a funeral parlor. Marie, let me tell you all about it myself. She began to talk about her costume and the reason for it. As bad as she looked, she was even worse than she looked. I slumped lower and lower in my chair. I was figuring out in my mind how she would behave next, and mentioned that she was counting on me to pay all the legal fees. The people in this room had to be getting at least $1,800 an hour combined. That's $30 a minute. I straightened up, hoping she'd get to the point faster. If you have never attended a trial, I suggest you do your best to see for yourself. Lawyers speak a language not conducive to understanding those who are in the unenviable position of paying for this drama. I got turned on when she said something about in flagrante delicto, referring to me. The language was odd, but I figured it had something to do with the fact that I hadn't buttoned my pants. We have pictures. I'm ready to show you some today. The first picture showed an attractive young woman sitting alone at a table for two. I recognized her, Rebecca Carter, a customer I'd dined with, but not at this restaurant and not as a couple. I had never dined alone with a client. The next picture was of the two of us, obviously at the same table, and she was looking at me. I wondered how it was taken. The second photo was real, I was sure of it. It didn't show the table, but our position matched the two seats in the previous photo. Together, they gave the impression that we were alone at an intimate dinner. There were other photos as well. The two of us leaving the restaurant holding hands, then in the elevator, embracing and kissing passionately. My face wasn't always visible, but my sports jacket was tweed, not at all casual, and where my whole face wasn't visible, the clothes made it obvious. It should be noted that Miss Carter was a new client who wanted me as her advisor and could only meet for dinner. She was a plant. It was done very well. There was a picture of our crying infant. I was holding my hands out to him to soothe him. And of course, it was claimed that he was crying because I was hitting him. One picture didn't prove anything, but in the pile, it was more than illustrative. Next, we turned to our finances. Being an accountant, I was very good at documenting everything. We had a fairly large account set up in my name only. It held money for our retirement accounts, college funds for the kids, and so on. I wrote a detailed description of how the account would be used and suggested that it be set up in both of our names. Marie and I went over this description, and I left her a copy. She stated that she had not seen it. We took a break. One of the ushers offered Ed a conference room so we could have some privacy. Ed enthusiastically stated, "You are too kind. You think of everything. We are so grateful to you. May I take a look at this?" As he and the servant were leaving, Sally said, "Ed probably suspects that the room is bugged. As we sit there, he will ask you questions. They won't be questions for us, but for them. When you answer, pretend you don't know exactly what to say. Don't lie, they know that what they have shown is not what it seems. And if you say too much, they will realize you are lying." We walked into the room, and Ed launched into a tirade about me dating some woman. I, stammering and stuttering, told him that all was not as it seemed. He said he didn't want to hear it. How did I expect them to defend me? In the middle of his tirade, he looked at his watch, shut off his emotions, and said, "We should get back to the group." As we walked back, I said to Sally, "I was trying to be so careful, and then Ed went and did it." "Did what?" she asked, more than curious. "He's full of emotion. Then he looks at his watch, calms down, and we walk back." "My God, Bob, you're new at this. His emotions are the show. They know that. All the world's a stage, if you remember Shakespeare. He played his part, you played yours. But he just turned it off. I still didn't understand. Since we're coming back to sit and watch the other side, he can't be red-faced and breathing heavily when we get back. In this process, you are required to behave and we are not. Don't try to analyze why we do anything. You'll go crazy. From that point on, the meeting was very short. Ed asked a couple of procedural questions and then Sally began her tirade. It was the biggest fabricated lie she had ever seen. There was no point in talking to people no more honest than those sitting at the table. I noticed that Sally was looking directly at her opponent, the lead attorney, and Ed was watching Marie impassively. They were one hell of a team. Marie announced that she'd had enough of all this and they'd had enough and we were leaving. So we did. The second time, Marie said we needed to talk, but we didn't. The three of us had a meeting in their office. It seemed to us all that the key point was Marie. She kept aloof and barely participated in the conversation throughout the meeting. Ed began, "I've known her since you two started dating. She smiled at me the way one smiles at passers-by on the street, and then never looked in my direction again. Of the 8 people on her side of the table, she didn't make the top half in terms of interest shown, and came in last place in terms of emotion shown. I saw the way you looked at her when Sally went on her tirade at the end. What did you think?" "Well, that was the worst part. I looked at you first, and not surprisingly, you were looking right at her. So I watched to see how she would handle it. It was completely curious. She was scanning the room, not particularly interested in anything. She was looking at you, but no more interested than she was in me. Or Sally, for that matter. You saw her with Dickie. The only time, what did they look like?" "Sally, actually, I didn't see them at all. They weren't 5 feet away from me, but in the house, I was outside listening through the window." "So?" "Same question." "They were talking about being together." "No, that's not right. They were together. I'm speaking in the past tense. She begged to leave me some money, but he refused and she didn't seem to mind. She also wanted him to be there, but he didn't think it was wise. He said Junior had a problem with him and married women. I asked around. No one sees them in his usual places. What's more, no one sees him himself in the same places." Ed fussed. "Oh, Ed, for heaven's sake, tell me what you think. Don't make him beg. It all looks as if Dickie has fallen in love. If he is, it's different from what we've been describing. This wasn't a contingent she put together to get rid of her husband. This was a group set up to help get the freedom of the woman he wanted to marry." Sully had a look as if he'd won the lottery. "Oh, you're right. She was like a disinterested passenger on some flight to nowhere. Nervous, she took a couple of sedatives to keep her cool. She could do that because she had no real role. She just rode along until she was told to get off." For some reason, I felt sad. I can't help but say it depressed me. I guess I knew about it, but it made it more real. Divorcing her because she's unfaithful and I don't need her is almost acceptable. But finding out that she's gone so far that I don't even remember her past anymore really hurts. And if you know you're more than a client to us, get on with your job. Sally turned so that she was looking me straight in the eye. "We know you want access to your children. We know you're innocent. And we know what a ruthless son of a bitch Junior is. The bad months are coming. You don't deserve them. But unfortunately, they're coming anyway. Back off." "It's a little cold, honey." Ed leaned forward too toward me. "She's right, though. That client of yours, Carter? That was her name? When we question her, we're in for a disappointment. She'll say something not quite true, but clever enough that we can't catch her in a lie. She'll refer to you as almost. Will belittle you without saying anything special." Sue intervened. "Ed, you know we have to worry about Marie." She turned to me. "Bob, will Marie lie about you? Will she say she fears for her safety and the safety of her children around you?" "I can only hope not. But like I said, she can be very vindictive. If Dickie has convinced her that I'm fooling around, it doesn't matter if my client is telling the plain truth. Think about it. They tell her I was spotted, but they have no proof. They took some crappy pictures to illustrate their point. They don't need to convince the court, they need to convince her. If they succeed, she can convince her to burn me because I deserve it." Ed stepped back and hunched in his chair. "I accused her of being cold. That's bad news. If Dickie has fallen in love and intends to marry her, Junior should get you out of the way. If she falters and wants to go back, he'll make sure she has nothing to go back to. That's bad news. I take it you think it's bad news. I tried to laugh, but the laughter stuck in my throat. What do I have to look forward to? It was Sally's turn. Nothing but physical violence. It will encroach on your life, on your income, on your ability to enjoy this area. If you fear it, and he might think about it, he will do it. You'll protect me? Ed looked firm. We'll do what we can. Hold on to that thought no matter what happens. Dickie's going to mess it up. He won't be able to help himself. I don't know how or when, but trust me, he will. Will he have to? Then when I'm living in some homeless shelter in Topeka, I'll be glad, because it's only a matter of time. Bad summer. Listen, I live in a nice apartment but without access to my home or my children. I had supervised visits every other Saturday. I can't say which of these lovely young people I had a harder time losing touch with. Claire was very well developed and so charming. She would soon be a young woman, and I missed that. Bobby hardly walked or talked when I left the house. I missed his transformation from helpless infant to small child. It was tearing me apart. I was in court 3 times trying to get joint custody. I thought Ed was doing a good job, but he was hampered by morals and ethics. Marie's attorneys had no such obstacles. They argued that a quick resolution of the divorce issue was the key to justice. Their arguments were that, unfortunately, in this case, I want to delay the case. But surely the children should not be jeopardized by my delaying tactics. Ed stood up and explained to the judge that I was not interested in dragging out the divorce proceedings, but was simply trying to get an acceptable child custody agreement. Marie was challenging my suitability as a father, and it was her fault that we were dragging out the process. Ed would point out that their arguments were completely circular. Marie, without evidence, argued that I was an unfit father. I disputed that assertion. The plaintiff, and she was the plaintiff, used her own assertion as evidence and obtained an expert opinion based on the unsubstantiated assertion that I was unfit. Now they are using that expert's opinion as the basis for their lawsuit. It amazes me how lawyers, when caught in an absolute lie, smile and come up with other plausible explanations as to why the lie may not be a lie. They don't go so far as to say it's true, they just say it might not be a lie. In this case, they argued that how could Ed or his client know the thoughts of an expert? If we believe that the only basis for saying I was unfit was Marie's complaint, that doesn't mean it's true. Ed said he'd be happy to question the expert to prove our arguments are right and theirs are wrong. Her attorneys said they would be happy to take the deposition and would make sure it took place as soon as possible. In their opinion, the earliest possible time was 2 weeks after the deadline. In the end, we testified and proved that their expert opinion had no basis in fact. It was a real sensation. Of course, by then, they had 2 other experts who, as far as we could find out, had taken the first expert's opinion and said I was an unfit father. Ed lost his temper and said it was the same thing, only anew. Her attorneys stated that it was not the same at all. The previous examiner based his opinion on the complaint. In this case, it was different. Ed, of course, pointed out that this time the expert's conclusions were based on the previous opinion, which had been invalidated. The judge began to lose patience. He said that if the testimony showed that Ed's objections were true, he would rule in favor of the defendant, me. They smiled, assured me that wouldn't happen, and swore they would provide both experts as soon as possible. I sat in the galley. I would say the cheap seats, but nothing in this case was cheap. It was clear they were finding ways to spend money on legal fees. In my opinion, they were damn good at it. Summer was slipping away. One of the experts unexpectedly went on a 60-day vacation and was unable to testify. Marie's lawyers, realizing they were in trouble, asked for a meeting with the judge. At that meeting, they swore that it had never occurred to them to ask about the European vacation, which had been planned more than a year in advance. Now they were ready for everything to be decided by the divorce hearing scheduled for early October. Ed admonished the opposing counsel and reminded the judge that if they couldn't prove my unfitness, he would award joint custody. The judge agreed. He said that starting September 12th, I would get custody every Wednesday until 8 p.m. and on weekends without supervision. Mid-September, and we had our first victory or partial victory. I was beyond thrilled. An express trip to despair. They were relentless. Although I didn't have cancer, I'd say it was about the same. You wake up one morning and everything you took for granted is now in question. Nothing feels right. There is no situation in which you are safe. I learned about depositions, interrogations, and affidavits. I've signed some documents, but I never knew what they were or why. At least I wasn't completely sure. I chuckled. Right above my signature it said, "The following is not endorsed by an affiliate. I am an accountant. You add up numbers and subtract a percentage from them. There is no such thing as stupidity in accounting." Does that mean there is in law? I submit that it doesn't. I had another card in this game. The police arrested me on a false charge, and Sally assured me that the city would pay. The payout would be large enough to handle the stack of court bills I had to pay. One morning, Sally called me at work. It was the second month of the investigation. The city was in financial trouble. An unnamed patron of the arts had agreed to buy some bonds with one condition. He was to be the sole decision-maker on my false arrest suit. Fortunately, the city attorney handling the case is quite young, and that offended her. "Sally, I'm sorry she took offense. Obviously, that means I won't get a settlement or get one anytime soon." Well, that's right. That's bad news, but there's good news. She thought it was close to racketeering. She was dressed down and told it was a great way for the city to get a large sum of money, get involved in public works, and her role was to pass on any settlement offer to Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. So she did a little digging and found out that the benefactor was Junior, and his motive was to withhold money from you. "So we can make a case against him?" "No, it's unofficial, but we have an ally. He might come in handy." "Do you accept will come in handy as payment?" "Let's not worry about payment for now." "Yeah, for now." I said it with as much sarcasm as I was capable of. You can't imagine how quickly a good life can turn to crap. It was Friday, September 27th. I could feel the impending chill of winter in the fall air. I was surprised that our CEO and owner of the firm had called a meeting among his top 5 employees. I was even more surprised that he had sold the firm, and the only significant change was that I no longer had a job. He announced it as the 6 of us sat in his conference room. A tear rolled out of my eye, so intense was the shock. I started to speak. He held out his hand with the palm of his hand toward me, indicating that I should hold it. The rest of him let go. "I'm staying in the same position. Nothing has changed except I got a wad of money and you're leaving. It's not a very polite thing to do, but what can you do? That's what I did. By the way, since you're no longer with the firm, you have to vacate your apartment by the 30th. "You bastard." "Bob, I said too much. You were working on your own accord and I have the right to terminate your contract. I should have gotten a group together and announced your departure. I should have done that today and asked you to vacate your apartment by Monday. It's done. I'm sorry about that. Get out." No settlement, no job, no company car, no home. From the top of society to the bottom. One easy step. I called Ed. Turns out the phone service had been disconnected. What the hell? I had no job. I had nothing but time. I could walk to talk to them. I walked a couple blocks and it started to rain cold. I looked up. "You too?" I had my only ally. I was cold, wet, and desperate when I got to Dover and Joyette's offices. Both were in a meeting, but I was assured the wait wouldn't be more than a few minutes. I was just getting changed, and then Sally came up to me and asked what was wrong. I explained. She said, "He's violent. I'm afraid there's more, but I can't imagine what else." "They cut off my cell phone service. The bill is in both our names. I don't know how they did it. I need this phone. It connects me to our home network. It's the only way I can see my kids. If I don't have it, I'll lose it." Sally found my phone and disappeared. She was gone for quite a while, almost an hour. She came back. "Try calling." I dialed her number on speed dial. Her phone rang, and I was back in business. I'm not ashamed to admit that I cried like a baby. The trauma and then the relief just got to me. Sally sat down next to me and hugged me while I cried. "You're coming home with us tonight. We'll decide what to do next." I couldn't talk to them. I sat in their guest bedroom and looked at my phone. It was a little after 8 in the evening. We had installed a nanny cam with an app that allowed us to watch our young son when mom and dad weren't home. He was asleep. Then maybe he had a bad dream or something, but he woke up and started crying. He cried for a little while and then he started screaming loudly. It was his only way to get through to his mom. Cry louder, then louder, then louder, then louder. And then I was shocked to see Dickie staggering into the room and swearing at my boy. I ran into the room and yelled to Ed and Sally, "Look at this!" By this time, Dickie had already started making noise, which made the child even louder, and Dickie became even more aggressive. Ed stood up. "Sally, call 911. They need the whole world to go to that house right now." He looked at me. "Bob, we're going to your house right now." Our houses were separated by over 30 minutes. Ed asked me to call 911 from the car. I think he knew it wasn't necessary, but he wanted to keep me busy while he drove over every speed limit known to man. By the time we pulled up to the house, there was an ambulance, a fire truck, 4 police cars, and a small army of lookouts. Ed told me to sit next to him and keep my mouth shut. This surprised me. He said it in a way that I realized. He would express my outrage and keep me out of trouble. He found the officer in charge and demanded an explanation of what was happening. It took a little while, but soon the officer told us everything he knew. They pulled up to the house and did not immediately open the door. They opened it with an effort. Dickie had passed out. Marie was lying on the bed. Both were now in custody. I returned home, lay down on the bed, fully dressed, and immediately fell asleep. I woke up to the doorbell ringing and knocking on the front door. It was 10:05. I guess even sleeping until 10 didn't help. I tried to laugh to myself. I opened the door. An elderly gentleman who looked like a shaggy member of the ferret family stared me in the face. "Mr. Bob Watson?" "Perhaps." "Mr. Watson, if I could have a moment of your time, I have a few ideas that might put an end to your bad streak and get you back on track." I continued to stand in the doorway, blocking his path. "Your name?" "My name is John Cheatham. I'm a lawyer." "John, my friend, I was born at night but not last night. This bad streak of mine was designed, engineered, and created by you and your firm. I would have thought you were suddenly overwhelmed by guilt, but you said you were a lawyer. Despite our past, we're in a position to help each other now." "Bullshit. You're a I don't know. I want to say hitman, but they're kinder. They put a bullet in a person and their pain is over. You're closer to the Marquis de Sade. Speaking of which, one of his students visited my wife last night. If I may, you may as well damn well not tell me. I wasn't in Sally's league, but I could use some of her material. Here's the thing. Dickie's in deep shit. He's going to jail. They found drugs on him. His old man has a plan. If he wants me to consider his plan, he and I will meet face to face, just the two of us. Otherwise, he can shove it up his ass." "That might not be possible." "No problem." I slammed the door in his face. He immediately knocked, trying to restart the conversation. I opened the door. I stared at him with all the hatred I felt for his client and his law firm. I didn't say anything. He was going to look me in the eye. I slammed the door shut again. The knocking resumed. I opened the door. Said, "Thanks to your client, I slept for a little over an hour. I want him in jail. Hell, I want you in jail. You have 10 seconds, then I'm going back to bed. If I go back to bed, this little drama is going to play out the way it's going to play out. Can I come in? I want to make a quick phone call and see if we can agree on terms. It's clear to me that you won't honor the terms I set. I don't like you. I don't trust you. I will allow you to come in primarily so that I can sit down. If I suggest you leave, I want you to agree in advance that you will get up and leave immediately. If you don't, I will call 911 and explain why you are here. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir, I will leave. Let me make the call. I'm sure we can find some common ground." We walked to the front room and sat down. He pulled out his cell phone and called. "I'm with Mr. Watson. I haven't started any negotiations with him. Before I gave the reason for my presence here, he suggested that it was that Dickie was in trouble and his father wanted to help him out of trouble. His condition for hearing anything is to speak directly to his father." He paused, listening. Every now and then he uttered, "Uh-huh," and then began to listen again. Finally, "Yes, sir, hold on, I'll ask." He looked at me, holding the phone in his lap. "Mr. Watson, as you can understand, the situation is delicate, and it seems to me that I can arrange a meeting, but it has to be quick and it has to be the two of you. I need to be sure you haven't contacted anyone beforehand." I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. "Look, you're here. I'm here. Pick a spot. Let's get in your car. I lost mine, by the way, and let's go get acquainted. It's not that hard. I'd prefer to meet outdoors if you'd allow it, but your client is the kind of person for whom inconvenience disappears. I have nothing left but my life, and I'd like to hold on to it if I can. He held up a finger, ordering me to wait, and brought the phone to his ear again. Did you hear that? Then he started repeating again. Uh-huh. Finally, let me confirm that. He looked at me. Do you know Falconwood Park, near the confluence of the two rivers? Great place, not too far away if that's the offer. I'll take it. In 10 minutes? You got me out of bed. Let me go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, and so on. You can watch if you want. Let's say 20 minutes from now, and I'll hurry up. Do you have a cell phone? Yes, to the horror of everyone except my young son. It's on the nightstand. I expect it to be there, untouched, when I get back. Well, I guess so. What do you take me for? Tampering with or stealing a cell phone is not on the list of dishonest acts I take you for. Don't play the insulted innocence. I'll be right back. I didn't linger, but I wasn't in a hurry either. I headed for the restroom located just outside the entrance. Mr. Cheatham could be sure I hadn't brought anything with me and came out in the same clothes. I joined him and walked over to my phone. I wish you hadn't done that. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Force of habit. Sure, we can leave it. We reached his car and headed for the park. I was surprised. It was the last Saturday in September, and the park was full of people. Cheatham called on the phone and asked Junior where he was. We got directions and walked over to the bench, where Richard Newberg Jr. was sitting. Cheatham said he would wait for me here, and I went to my first meeting with the man who had ruined my life. He turned out to be the kind of smug bastard I expected him to be. He gestured for me to sit down. He didn't offer me a handshake, so I didn't have to decline. For a while, we sat in silence. Mr. Watson, may I call you Bob? Call me whatever you want. Maybe we can be best friends. My blank stare probably told him I didn't think that was possible. Bob, we have a real problem and I'm sure we can help each other. He paused for me to nod, or agree, or whatever. As still as I was, I expected a pigeon to land on me at any moment. Your ex-wife is not a very nice person. I think you know that. Unfortunately, her actions have led to dire circumstances for both you and my son. I continued to wait for the pigeons. Since these were your wife's actions, I thought that you and I should agree somehow, so that neither you nor my son would be punished too harshly. Junior, and I don't care what you prefer to be called, that's what I think. Your criminal son will be arraigned Monday morning. If you don't get to the point, you and I are going to sit here wondering what the hell you're talking about. I froze in place again. His legs were already crossed. He crossed his arms as well. I don't think there's any need to talk about it. I shook my head. I agree. You're not saying anything. I'm not doing anything. In a couple months, we're going to find out your son was destroyed in prison, and I guess we'll take it with different emotions. He straightened to his full height. I may take it as a threat to my son's life. Junior, stop it. Just stop. If you need something from me, tell me. Tell me what I have to do and tell me what I get when I do it. I'll weigh whether some dirty wad of silver is worth what your son did to mine. He tried to look innocent, but like a wolf before a sheep, he had no idea what innocence might look like. That's just the point. My son wouldn't hurt any living creature. That's your wife's fault. I was glad I'd watched Sally and Ed during the various negotiations. No matter what was being said, they sat as if someone was reading the phone book. Apparently, that was the end of his presentation. After a short pause, he said, So, what do you think? Is English your first language? I'm curious because I'm willing to swear, I said, that you'll tell me what you want me to do and what I'll get for it, and I'll evaluate whether I'll do it. Suddenly, his feet seemed interesting to him. He stared at them, muttering, Clearly, I don't want to. Junior, I realize you don't want to say anything. We're done here. Your son is going to get a shiv from some righteous prisoner. Is there anything else? He sighed, resigned to having to say more. Okay, I understand why you've been successful. You're not an idiot. My douchey offspring is a walking, talking disaster. But he really means no harm. He's not smart enough. You're right. If he's put in a maximum security prison, he'll get what other inmates consider justice. I have to avoid that. I'm sure you can come up with a reasonable story that points to your wife. My son will get a lighter sentence. If you do this for me, I can take care of restoring your old life and pay $1 million for your son's bright future. What do you say? You're asking me to perjure myself. It was your idea, your son hurt mine, and you want me to take all the risk. Now he was almost squirming. I'm in a desperate position. I can't do anything. It will look like I'm trying to make good on his case. But you are beyond suspicion. That's why we're only talking about you and me. We will forever be each other's hostages, and if either of us says anything about the other, our own crime will be solved. I shook my head. I'm going to hell, there's no doubt about that. I paused and then continued. I hate my wife, there's no doubt about that, but everything I've ever seen from her says she's a devoted mother. I'm afraid if I make anything up, it will be as bad as your endeavors. So where does that leave us? You call my former employer. You tell him to take me back as a partner. He can keep the controlling interest, but I will now be a partner. We'll call it an act of good faith. Monday morning we'll meet and I'll make up a story as you suggest. If you want to tweak the lies, that's fine with me. For the lie you asked for, you'll give me 2 cashier's checks. One for $1 million into a trust for my son, and the other for $200,000 to me, for my creative services. I think we can do that. In a normal situation, I would fear that you would try to get out of it somehow. I approached you for the purpose of extorting money. It is me and my wife who are the evil, and you and your poor child who are the victims. I need something from you at the time of the exchange that ensures you won't cheat me twice. I have no idea what that looks like, but I need assurance that you and I know that we are obstructing justice with our offer, and we are bound to keep our dishonesty a secret. I'll work something out. On Monday, let's meet at 11 o'clock at the Starbucks on 3rd Street. We can stand out front with coffee, leisurely do our business, and hit the road. Agreed. I expect a call by the end of Sunday to get my job back on track as an act of good faith. The rest, my lying about your intentions, your payment for the lie, and your statement obliging us to remain silent, at 11 o'clock Monday. Will Mr. Cheatham drive me home? Of course. Epilogue. I have to admit, my story on Monday was on point. It was the best shit Sally, Ed, the city attorney, and I could come up with in a little over 10 hours. Junior was thrilled to hear it and happily handed me the checks. He didn't seem as excited when he was arrested for obstruction of justice. One of the things Sally made sure of before my short Friday night was that I had my microphone with me. It was in my belt buckle. Cheatham's entire conversation with me was recorded. It looked like he might have been disbarred. Not only was my conversation with Junior being recorded with my belt buckle, there were 4 men from various law enforcement agencies with parabolic microphones on site. They had set up camp a block from my house and, after learning of the meeting place, were able to sneak into the park while I was doing my ablutions. The young city attorney was obsessed with getting Junior. Buying bonds to keep the city out of litigation was unethical. She didn't like that he could bully the city and hurt people by using his money for the good of the community. She considered it racketeering. By the time it was over, she had gotten 4 high-ranking officials fired and added a racketeering count to Junior's indictment. I was reinstated as a partner, owning 33% of the company. The owner retained 67% to pass it on to his 2 children and allow them to retain control of the company when he retired. He was very apologetic about it. It seems that Junior offered him 2 options: agree to a good amount of money and take on a non-participating partner in the company whose only request was that I quit, or they would go after his clients, offering them one by one a sufficient discount to get them on his side. In the latter case, both he and I would be out of a job. Although it was unpleasant for him to do this to me, he liked to eat. Oh, did I mention that it was also racketeering, and it was added to Junior's list of sins? Marie's fate changed dramatically in one weekend. She went from child custody in our beautiful home to an orange jumpsuit and a 6x8 cell. Suddenly, life was good again. The city officials issued a citation for my false arrest. A check for over $1 million went to pay for my lawyers and my children's future. I was debt-free, living in my home and rebuilding my life. The date of the divorce hearing arrived. The interest of Marie's attorneys waned noticeably. One of them did show up and did enough to ensure that negligence was not added to the firm's woes. The divorce went through. I got full custody of the child. Marie was facing serious jail time. As I walked out of the courtroom with my first genuine smile in a while, Marie's voice said weakly, "Bob, we need to talk." My smile widened and I quickened my step, leaving her behind. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.